Welcome to Updates at Noon with me, Renee Fong. The government has allocated 69 billion ringgit for development expenditure in Budget 2021, out of which 45% are for continuation of projects and 55% for new projects. In a statement, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Datuk Sri Mustafa Muhammad, said this mitigates the impact of COVID-19 on the country's economy. Explaining further, Datuk Sri Mustafa said the government has no issue to continue carrying out 3,834 projects. However, he said early and meticulous planning is very important to ensure that 2,558 new projects can be carried out smoothly next year. Datuk Sri Mustafa also said all ministries have been instructed to present their development projects implementation planning for 2021 to the Office of the Chief Secretary to the government by 31st December 2020. He said the planning included the expected date to call for project tenders and the start of initial works, adding that the ministries were also required to identify the problems that might arose. He added that public sector spending is critical during this period when the private sector, especially small and medium enterprises, are facing challenges to stimulate and revive the economy. Bank Negara Malaysia, BNM, has elaborated on the new and enhanced financing facilities for small and medium enterprises, SMEs, namely the Targeted Relief and Recovery Facility, TRRF, and the Micro Enterprises Facility, MEF, as announced in Budget 2021. In a statement released, the Central Bank said under the TRRF, eligible SMEs which have been adversely affected by COVID-19 can obtain financing for working capital purposes of up to 500,000 ringgit for a tenure of up to 7 years, including a repayment moratorium of at least 6 months. Elaborating further, BNM said the facility is offered at a rate of up to 3.5% per annum and is available through 21 participating financial institutions, PFIS, with guarantee coverage by Credit Guarantee Corporation, CGC, or Syarikat Jaminan Pembiayaan Perniagaan, SJPP. The 2 billion ringgit facility aimed at assisting SMEs in the services sector is available until 31st December 2021 or until it's fully utilized, whichever comes earlier. On the MEF, BNM said it has been enhanced to improve access to credit for micro enterprises to include self-employed individuals, gig workers on digital platforms, and participants of the IT card program, a social financing program that supports micro entrepreneurs from the B40 segment. The central bank also said that the MEF has been increased from 300 million ringgit to 410 million ringgit with an available balance of 200 million ringgit. Eligible micro enterprises can obtain financing of up to 50,000 ringgit for working capital and capital expenditure purposes. BNM also said the financing rate will be determined by the PFIs, adding that PFIs can also seek guarantee coverage from CGC or SJPP for this facility. Interested SMEs can apply for the TRRF directly from PFIS, which comprise commercial banks, Islamic banks, and development financial institutions regulated by BNM via their websites or by visiting the PFIS's branches. For the MEF, interested micro enterprises can apply directly to PFIS under the Scheme Pembiayaan Mikro. Tourism, Arts and Culture Minister Datuk Sri Nancy Shukri hopes more write-ups and books published on arts, culture, heritage and tourism will be translated into foreign languages. She said this would help captivate the interests of international communities to recognise the cultural pluralism and tourist destinations in Malaysia. Datuk Sri Nancy said the move can also attract the interest of book lovers or literary tourists to travel to the fascinating places in the country. She said this in a statement yesterday in conjunction with the 2020 National Library PNM Book Awards on Monday. The minister also said the ceremony held online via the PNM Facebook page was the best platform to showcase quality books in the local list of publications as well as elevate Malaysia's best works globally. She said the awards were also to appreciate celebrate the contribution of the book industry players to the development of national books, as well as to enhancing knowledge and the culture of reading among Malaysians. The awards are also to encourage the submission of books to PNM as national heritage treasures and catalyst, as well as to support the National Creative Industry Initiative in line with Kuala Lumpur as the World Book Capital 2020. Based on statistics, the titles of the new books registered under the Deposit of Library Material Act 1986 are 18,566 last year. The award ceremony saw each of the 22 winners, comprising 11 writers and 11 publishers, taking home 3,500 cash, trophy and appreciation certificate. The books that were submitted are the first edition in 2018 and 2019 and produced by Malaysian publishers as the main criteria and in compliance with international standards. The Kedah Royal Malaysian Customs Department JKDM seized 1,224 bottles of liquor worth an estimated 654,815 ringgit, including unpaid tax at the North Port in Port Klang on 25th November. Its director Azizah Kecil said the raid was conducted by enforcement officers and the Customs Narcotics Branch at about noon after Ops Chantas, after monitoring the container for 2 weeks. Elaborating further on the matter, Aziza said the customs inspection found that the container from India was carrying 717 cartons of Imperial Blue brand liquor containing 1,224 bottles worth 248,976 ringgit, with tax estimated at 405,839. She also said investigation showed that the liquor are believed to be for sale in the country in conjunction with next month's Christmas and next year's Chinese New Year celebrations. The case is being investigated under Section 135, Subsection 1, Subsection D of the Customs Act 1967, and Customs are tracking the suspects involved in the case. Meanwhile, she said Customs also detained 16 individuals and seized various types of undeclared items in Ops Chantas from 10th to 24th November. She said 12 of the cases involved liquor shiza worth 42,347 including tax. 6 involved cigarette seizures worth 60,461 ringgit including tax, and 2 cases of car seizures totaling 375,760 ringgit including taxes. Still ahead, U.S. Attorney General refutes Trump election fraud claims. A Chinese probe sent to the moon to bring back the first lunar samples in 4 decades successfully landed yesterday. Beijing's space agency said the country has poured billions into its military-run space program with hopes of having a crewed space station by 2022 and of eventually sending humans to the moon. The latest mission's goal is to shovel up lunar rocks and soil to help scientists learn about the moon's origins, formation, and volcanic activity on its surface. State media agency Xinhua reported, citing the China National Space Administration, that the change 5 spacecraft named for the mythical Chinese moon goddess landed on the near side of the moon late yesterday. If the return journey is successful, China will be only the 3rd country to have retrieved samples from the moon, following the United States and the Soviet Union in the 1960s and 1970s. The probe entered the moon's orbit on Saturday after a 112-hour journey from Earth, after a rocket carried it into space from China's southern Hainan province last week. It is to collect 2 kilograms of surface material in a previously unexplored area known as Oceanus Proclarium, or Ocean of Storms, which consists of a vast lava plain. The collection will take place over the course of 1 lunar day, equivalent to around 14 Earth days. The United Nations said that malnutrition among young children has soared to the highest levels ever recorded in parts of war-torn Yemen as coronavirus and shortfalls in aid funding worsen a humanitarian crisis. More than 500,000 cases of acute malnutrition among children under 5 were recorded in the south, and the results of a survey of the north currently underway are expected to be equally concerning. The Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Home Programme and the UN Children's Fund UNICEF in a statement said a 15.5% increase in severe malnutrition in the age group has left at least 98,000 at high risk of dying unless they receive urgent treatment. Lise Grande, the UN's humanitarian coordinator for Yemen, said the data release confirms that acute malnutrition among children is hitting the highest levels since the war started. Yemen, which since 2014 has been gripped by a war between Iran-backed Houthi rebels and a beleaguered government, which is supported by a Saudi-led military coalition, has sunk into the world's worst humanitarian crisis. More than 24 million people, nearly 80% of the population, depend on some form of aid for survival. And this year, the situation has deteriorated sharply. UN added that escalating conflict and economic decline, plus the overwhelming impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, has pushed an already exhausted population to the brink. They further noted that aid programs, including emergency food assistance, have been disrupted as funds dry up. U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr said that the Justice Department has found no evidence of voter fraud significant enough to reverse Democrat Joe Biden's defeat of President Donald Trump in the 3rd November election. Barr made the comments as Trump's campaign persists in trying to prove there was fraud in key states Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere, hoping to prevent Biden's win from being made official in the Electoral College on 14th December. Attorneys for Trump have claimed everything from ballot box stuffing and fake ballot printing to thousands of dead people having voted to vote counting machines being programmed to favor Biden. In several legal filings, all rejected by the courts, the Trump campaign has sought to invalidate millions of votes for Biden based on claims that lacked any evidence. Barr didn't address specific claims. However, he told the news agency that there's been one assertion that would be systemic fraud, and that would be the claim that machines were programmed essentially to skew the election results. However, they haven't seen anything to substantiate that. Barr, long seen as a political loyalist to the president, said the only potentially justifiable claims of fraud are very particularized to a particular set of circumstances or actors or conduct. Barr's comments were reported about the same time he arrived at the White House for unspecified meetings. Around the time of the election, media reports said Trump was unhappy with the Justice Department chief for not making efforts to support his re-election and that Barr could be fired. Meanwhile, President-elect Joe Biden presented his economic team and pledged they will lead a plan to provide more relief for the faltering U.S. economy, which his future Treasury Secretary called an American tragedy. The diverse group that has women and minorities in key roles is set to inherit the fallout from millions in jobs losses, along with an ongoing wave of corporations laying off workers and small businesses shutting their doors amid a spike in COVID-19 cases. Biden, after introducing his tested and experienced team led by Treasury Secretary nominee Janet Yellen, called on Congress to rapidly approve a robust new relief package, but said anything accomplished by the lame duck legislature will not be enough. He said his team already is working on a new plan that can be launched on day one to revive the economy and create more than 18 million jobs through investments in infrastructure, clean energy, and manufacturing. Other nominees for Biden's economic team include Nigerian-born Wale Adeyemo, the first African-American in the role of Deputy Treasury Secretary. Neera Tanden, president of liberal think tank Center for American Progress, was picked to head the Office of Management and Budget. If confirmed, she would be its first South Asian leader, but she is a controversial choice who faces oppositions from conservatives and progressives. Cecilia Rouse, the dean of the Princeton School of Public and International Affairs, was tapped to chair Biden's Council of Economic Advisors and would be the first African American in that post. A baby was among 4 people killed and 15 injured when a car tore through a pedestrian shopping street in the southwestern German city of Trier. Prosecutor Peter Fritzen said a driver, a 51-year-old Trier native, appeared to be suffering from psychiatric problems and had been under the influence of alcohol whilst at the wheel of his silver SUV. Police who have been questioning the suspect said they had no indications of a political motive, while prosecutors are considering requesting that the suspect be placed in psychiatric care. At the same press conference, their mayor, Wolfram Leiby, said among the dead were a 9-month-old baby and a 73-year-old woman. Also killed were a 25-year-old woman and 45-year-old man, while 15 people were injured, several seriously. Witnesses had earlier described seeing people, including a young child in a stroller, being flung into the air as the car struck them. The incident started around 1:50 p.m. and ended within 4 minutes of the first emergency calls arriving, with police intercepting the driver after he turned right off a main shopping street. Police said he had ploughed through the streets for about a kilometre, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Officers sealed off the area and cleared people from the city centre. European countries were given a clear time frame for the start of their vaccination programs after the bloc's medicines regulator said it would decide by 29th December whether to grant emergency approval for the first COVID-19 jabs. French President Emmanuel Macron announced plans to prioritize the most fragile and exposed groups in early 2021, followed by a second campaign for the rest of the population between April and June. Germany has already said it is hoping to launch its immunization drive in the first quarter of 2021 and is preparing vaccination centers across the country. The European Medicines Agency EMA said it would hold an extraordinary meeting on 29th December at the latest to consider emergency approval for a vaccine developed by Germany's BioNTech and US giant Pfizer. Hopes that COVID shots could be ready for use by the end of this year received a boost when US firm Moderna said it was filing for emergency authorization of its vaccine in the United States and Europe. The EMA said it would hold a separate meeting to assess that request by 12 January at the latest. Large-scale trial data released last month showed that both vaccines were safe and around 95% effective against COVID-19. European Commission spokesman Stefan de Keersmaeker told reporters that once the EMA gave regulatory permission, formal authorization from Brussels would follow very quickly, probably in a matter of days. Turkey began imposing a nationwide weekday curfew yesterday to combat the spread of the coronavirus, as the country's daily COVID-19 death toll hit a record high for a 9th consecutive day. Health Ministry data showed coronavirus deaths in Turkey rose to a new record yesterday, with 190 fatalities in the last 24 hours, as Turks braced for new restrictive measures to curb the spread of the pandemic. President Tayyip Erdogan announced new measures on Monday to combat the surge in cases and deaths, including introducing a weekday curfew and a full lockdown at weekends. According to the new measures that went into effect on Tuesday evening, citizens will not be allowed to leave home between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. on weekdays or at all at weekends. According to the country's health ministry, the number of new coronavirus cases, including asymptomatic ones, recorded over the past 24 hours stood at 30,110. Total deaths rose to 13,936, but historical data on total cases is not available, as Turkey only reported symptomatic cases for 4 months. It began reporting all cases on 25th November. Up in the sports segment, Spanish champions Real Madrid at risk of dramatic European elimination. We begin with Malaysia's Super League updates. The Selangor Super League team will now be officially known as Selangor FC (SFC) following the privatisation of the Malaysian League in the country starting next year. Football Association of Selangor FAS in a statement said the football team is owned by the professional football entity, namely Red Giants FC Sendirian Berhad. Among the shareholders of the company are the Raja Muda of Selangor, Tengku Amir Shah Sultan Sharafuddin Idris Shah Al-Haj, as a golden shareholder. Selangor State Development Corporation, PKNS, Menteri Besar Incorporated MBI and also FAS. According to FAS, the Football Association of Malaysia FAM has approved the privatisation of Selangor Super League team on 29th September, before the separation between FAS and Selangor FC, which took effect yesterday.
Kita operasi kita masih sama, iaitu kita akan fokus kepada pasukan profesional. Penekanan juga akan diberikan terhadap kebolehan untuk menjana pendapatan untuk pasukan kita. Jadi benda tu akan berterusan lah daripada awal kita masuk 2 tahun lepas sampailah sekarang hinggalah ke beberapa tahun yang akan datang lah. So kita akan teruskan usaha mengkomersialkan, mencari sebanyak pendapatan untuk pasukan bola sepak kita lah. Jadi perancangan tu semua berterusan, and kita pun sekarang ni sedang memasuki fasa untuk membangunkan lagi beberapa fasiliti di pusat latihan FAS, pejabat untuk jurulatih, gym dan juga klinik yang baru untuk pemain dan juga untuk orang awam, dan kita lihatlah bagaimana mungkin padang tertutup juga kita akan bina. So sekarang ni kerja-kerja ni sedang berlangsung dan berjalan lah.
FAS also revealed that its Secretary General, Dr. Johan Kamal Hamidon, has been appointed as Selangor FC Chief Executive Officer, while the head of Competition Unit, Muhammad Izrin Nabil, will take over Dr. Johan's role as new FAS Secretary General. The statement also added that Tengku Amir Shah still remains as the Selangor FC Chairman and FAS President, despite both organisations are now separated from each other. Real Madrid's Champions League hopes are hanging in the balance after they lost 2-0 at Shakhtar Donetsk, leaving them third in Group B with one round of games remaining. The defeat followed Saturday's 2-1 reverse to Alaves in La Liga, but Zidane vowed to fight on, dismissing suggestions he could resign, as he did in May 2018 after lifting a third straight Champions League crown. Real were missing record signing Eden Hazard after another injury to the Belgian and were still without captain Sergio Ramos, though they were boosted by the return of Karim Benzema. They looked the better side before the interval and nearly scored an early goal when Narco Asensio hit the post from a tight angle, but the second half belonged to Shakhtar, who savoured another upset win over the kings of European football. The 13-time European champions went behind in the 57th minute when Shakhtar substitute Dentino capitalised on lapse in concentration by Rafael Varane to score in an empty Olympic Stadium, where Madrid won their last Champions League in 2018. Israeli forward Mene Solomon then wrapped up the home side's shock win over the Spaniards in the 82nd with a solo run on the counter and finish into the bottom corner. Shakhtar, who beat Madrid 3-2 away in October, are second in Group B on 7 points, level with Zinedine Zidane's side, but above them due to their superior head-to-head record. Real host Gladbach next week in their final game, knowing victory would secure qualification from their group for a 24th consecutive season. Over in Madrid, Atletico Madrid are set to face a nerve-wracking final game to ensure they reach the Champions League knockout stage after they drew 1-1 at home to a much-changed Bayern Munich side, following a late penalty from Thomas Müller. Atleti looked on course for a comfortable victory, which would have sealed a place in the last 16 when Joao Felix put them in front of the 26th minute, appearing at the near post to knock in a cross from Marcos Llorente. But Diego Simeone's side, playing without Luis Suarez and Diego Costa, weren't able to add to their lead against holders Bayern, who rested most of their first-team regulars after qualifying as group winners last week. Atletico were making made to pay for their conservatism when substitute Müller beat goalkeeper Jan Oblak from the spot in the 86th minute after being felled by defender Felipe. A third consecutive draw left Atletico second in Group A with 6 points, and to qualify they must avoid defeat in their final game to RB Salzburg, who are third with 4 points. Teenager Curtis Jones grabbed a 58th-minute winner as an injury hit Liverpool qualified for the knockout stage of the Champions League with a 1-0 win over Ajax Amsterdam at Anfield early this morning. Jurgen Klopp's men began the game knowing they would qualify for the knockout stages if they avoided defeat, but they were dealt a blow pre-match when Alisson Becker was ruled out through injury. Calvin Kelleher deputised, and the 22-year-old put in a solid performance on his Champions League debut, saving well from Noussair Mazraoui in the first half and doing well from an Anthony shot after the break, which saw David Neres strike the post with the rebound. The goal came in fortuitous circumstances and against the run of play when Ajax goalkeeper Andre Onana failed to collect Nico Williams' cross from the right wing, allowing Curtis Jones to tap in at the far post with the outside of his boot. Liverpool have 12 points from 5 games and top the group following Atalanta's 1-1 draw against FC Midtjylland. Ajax with 7 points are a point adrift of second place Atalanta and need a victory over the Serie A in their final group game to reach the round of 16. Elsewhere, Inter Milan forward Romelu Lukaku scored twice in the second half to secure a 3-2 win at Borussia Mönchengladbach and keep their hopes of reaching the knockout stage alive, with Group B still wide open with 1 round of games left. The Belgium international has proved a lifesaver for Inter, having also scored twice, including a last-minute equaliser in their 2-2 draw with the Germans in Italy previously. Inter were rewarded for their strong start, with Matteo Darmian slotting the ball through the legs of goalkeeper Jan Sommer in the 17th minute. The Germans found their footing after half an hour, and despite frantic shouts from Inter coach Antonio Conte echoing across the empty stadium, the Italians lost their grip on the game. Alassane Pli headed home the equaliser in first half stoppage time, but as the hosts edged closer to a second goal after the break, Lukaku struck with a powerful shot across the area into the far corner. He then completed a quick move with an easy tap in 9 minutes later to make it 3-1. Mönchengladbach were not done yet, and Pli cut the deficit in the 76th, while 8 minutes later the Frenchman had an effort disallowed by VAR for an offside in the area. Gladbach are top of the B group on 8 points, one ahead of Shakhtar and Real Madrid after the Ukrainians earlier beat the visiting Spaniards 2-0. Inter are bottom on 5. All 4 teams will battle to reach the last 16 on the final match day. And that's it from us this afternoon. In our top story, 69 billion ringgit allocated for development expenditure in budget 2021. News at 10 comes on this evening on My Freeview's Berita RTM News channel. I'm Renee Fong. Thanks for watching and have a pleasant afternoon.